Welcome back to another episode of the Wet Dreamz Podcast. I'm your host, Jose Gonzalez. I'm a mental health therapist and a sex therapist, and I deal with guys with out of control sexual behavior and couples.
Hi, I'm Dr. Hinman. I am also a sex therapist. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. I also see a lot of couples and guys with out of control sexual behavior as well.
Sweet. Today's a fun episode. I mean, I think they're all fun, I guess, but I feel like I say that every time. We're talking about sexting today. And yeah, the dangers of sexting, I guess. That sounds negative, but there's obviously positive things to sexting and talking with a partner, but there's also some not so positive things when it comes to sexting. I know we've both had clients and situations that you're like, oh, maybe that's not the best. So, but the thing that sparked it, for me at least, there's this guy. His name is Dr. Disrespect. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I have not.
Figured, no offense, but so he's a big gamer, and he like streams online and stuff like that, plays games. And I guess he was let go from what's called Twitch. Have you heard of Twitch? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going at a pace that's like hopefully good for you. So he was let go of Twitch, the streaming platform, and they hadn't said what it was. Years later, they passed, and then there was like a rumor. He's kind of denied it. It's weird. That doesn't really matter, but there was a rumor that he was like DMing basically some of his people that would watch him live, and one of them, which he supposedly, it was called Twitch Whispers, but it's like a DM. One of the ones he was DMing was a minor, supposedly. They was a rumor that's why he got let go of his contract. But there was also no like legal stuff. I don't think that's happened since then or whatever, which may or may not be an indication, but that's not necessarily the indication. But anyway, and according to them, according to the rumor, it was kind of inappropriate conversations, but maybe not sexual. Anyways, that kind of prompted like this idea of there's so much of a gray area when it comes to talking online or sexting or, like DMing, especially when it comes to minors and it comes to just stuff like that in general. So I thought, man, that's a good episode to talk about like that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, like sexting, like what's one of the kind of gray areas that you've experienced with your clients? I think about one in particular, but have you had that kind of similar situation happen with one of your clients?
Yeah, I've had a number of clients that have sexting controversies.
Mm-hmm.
So for some reason I'm wanting to define sexting.
Yeah. Yep.
Even though everybody probably knows what it is. So sexting, in my opinion, is when you take pictures of yourself naked or masturbating or in some kind of sexual position, and then you send those electronically to somebody else. And
it could be sexual talk. Right. I mean, it can include pictures or it can not sometimes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just sexual talk, perhaps. Mm-hmm. And so the biggest problem that my clients have run into is I've had minor clients, so clients that were children, getting sext pictures of other minor children. And so it was a, minor to minor sexting, but that's still child pornography, like according to the courts, according to legal standing. Even if it's two 14-year-olds, right? And they're taking pictures and sending them back and forth, that's still child pornography. And so actually the person taking the pictures, they're manufacturing child pornography. And then when you send it, that's distributing child pornography. So that's another crime, right? And so there's been cases here because we're in Michigan, there's been cases here in Michigan where they're charged for each picture that they took and each picture that they sent.
Yes,
So
true.
if you took 5 pictures and sent 5 pictures, then that's 10 crimes that you committed. And so Michigan is very strict about that. Probably, I haven't checked the stats lately, but a few years ago, Michigan was number 2 in the nation for sex trafficking. And so I think that that's part of the reason Michigan is so strict about stuff like that.
Right.
Because they're trying to get away from that reputation.
Right.
And so another thing to point out about sexting is, so let's say that those kids did that when they were 14, but let's say they're 18 now. That's still child pornography because they took those pictures when they were 14.
Right.
The pictures don't age, right?
Right.
So that's still a 14-year-old in that picture. So forever until the end of time, that will be
It's
child
considered
pornography.
child porn. Yeah. Which I guess I didn't. That makes sense, but I didn't realize that was the case. So if you have, which is wild, right? Like if you have an old picture of someone back when you were whatever, and you're 19 now or 18. You can get in trouble for that.
Yep.
Yep.
And there are dangers. I mean, I've had clients who are adults, who are married, and they sext each other back and forth, right? And, that's a legitimate part of their relationship. And if it's not a problem for either one of them, and that's not a problem for me, right? But also, like... So that's cool if it's between consenting adults, right? But if you have an iPhone and you use the cloud, Apple will not disclose who has access to your cloud. Like if you go to an Apple store and you ask them, they cannot answer that question. Because I have multiple times asked them who has access to my cloud. And they're like, and then they look on their computer, and then there's no answer to that question. Because as a therapist, I don't use the cloud because I don't know who has access to the information. Right? Is there some person in California looking at all my pictures? Right? I mean, I don't have sex pictures on my phone, but I may have client information on my phone, and so if they can't tell me who has access to the cloud, then I don't use the cloud, right? And so if you do sext your partner as a consenting adult, there's no guarantee that somebody's not looking at those pictures or those videos,
right?
Because Apple will not tell us who has access to the cloud. And whatever the Samsung equivalent of that is, whatever. I'm sure they have some equivalent of the cloud. And
different cloud.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, then there's rash of celebrity leaks or whatever that comes from that often. Like their nude pictures will be leaked without their consent and without their knowledge or whatever. Like you see that a lot happen often all the time. So there's always the risk. Obviously, it's different, a celebrity versus just a regular person, but still it doesn't matter. You can still access it. Someone can do that to your iCloud,
Well, and yes, and so that's another risk, right? Is and it's hit the news a lot lately of typically young people, like teenagers, that are like a person will ask them for a pic, and then they'll send a pic to that person, and then that person blackmails them.
Yes.
Right? And some
sexploitation.
Because of sexploitation. They've sent the pictures, and then the person receiving the picture is like, oh, well, now you have to give me $1,000, or I'm going to send this to your school, or send it to your mom, or whatever. I don't know. Or both. And so then they extort money out of them, or they get them to send them more pictures and in more compromising positions, or that, because if they don't, then they're going to threaten to out them, right? And share these pictures publicly.
Right. And and that's definitely part of this conversation. That was there. Like, there's nothing more powerful of a tool than like shame, I suppose, or like fear. Having someone in a vulnerable position like that, and so many people fall for that. You know what I mean? To be like, to give them money or give more. In my brain, like, why would you give them more pictures to then black you further? But people do it. You know what I mean? It's not talking crap about the people that get scammed, because it's designed for them to get scammed. But it's just crazy to me, like that that they can have that much power over people. These like scammers or sexploiters. I don't know what you call them. You know, it's crazy.
Well, and they kind of befriend these people at first, right? And so then the person being exploited trusts them, and then they start doing mean, nasty stuff to them, right? And so then you feel betrayed and you feel confused and you feel panicky because this person's gonna, share my stuff, and so you just want it to go away, and so you think, well, giving them more pictures is going to make it go away, but that just makes them exploit you more.
Yep, definitely.
So if that happens to you, tell someone.
Trust. Exactly. Yeah. Stop talking to them and tell someone you trust. Yeah.
You think it's gonna you don't tell anybody because you're embarrassed or because you don't want to get in trouble, but it's only going to get worse, and you're going to get in more trouble if it keeps going, right? And I mean, like I said, some of these kids have killed themselves, and so rather than killing yourself, just tell somebody that you trust.
Tell someone, exactly. Yeah, for sure. What do you think is the draw for to sext people? You know what I mean? Why do you think people do it? And especially younger people. You figured out? Yeah, that question. I got you.
Again, it's a in my opinion, it's a complicated psychological process that's happening where it's implied and sometimes outright stated, if you don't send me pics, then I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Right? Like because the person asking for the pics, they find somebody that wants attention and needs interaction and friendship and whatever. And so that the person asking for the pics, they get them into a vulnerable position where, like, okay, I'm giving you attention. Now I'm going to ask you for a pic. And if you say no, then I'm going to say, well, then I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And so then that creates panic in the other person, because now I'm going to lose this friend that I trust, right? So I'm not even talking about exploiting anymore.
Right.
I'm just
in
talking
general.
about normal sexting. That threat of we're not going to be friends anymore. Like when you're 5 on the playground and you're like, I'm going to take my toys and go home because you're talking to Sam over there.
Right.
Not paying attention to me. Right? And so that's their version. The sexting version of that is, I'm going to cut off contact with you. And so I want a friend, and so I'm going to send pictures because I want them to keep talking to me.
Again, fear.
Yep.
So it's fear of, in those cases, and especially with younger clients. I mean, they're in a phase and a state of mind that's already sensitive to friends and fear of losing friendships and all that kind of stuff. So then you just amplify that. We'll throw in sex into that equation, and it could get complicated. So it's the fear of like losing a relationship, or a fear of whatever, you know what I mean? Like that often drives younger clients to do that. Sucks, for sure.
And for young, like 12, 13, 14-year-olds, their peer relationships are more important to them than even parental relationships, teacher relationships. They elevate their peer relationships above all other relationships. Research tells us that. And so to lose that relationship that you've held at such a high standard it's too costly for them. It means more.
Definitely for sure. So I mean, you had a situation which I think presents another dynamic, like, well, I guess it's a similar dynamic, but getting a sexting picture, like a younger client getting a sexting picture and then one of their friends seeing it or something like that. It was like distributed somehow around, like one friend saw it and then now the whole school sees it or whatever. Like imagine a situation like that. Like, that would suck.
Yeah, there's the story that I'm thinking of right now. This guy wasn't my client, but I mean, this has happened to my clients too. The one that's in my head right now, 20 miles from where we're sitting, there was he was 16, his girlfriend was 15. He asked her for pics, and from a legal standpoint, just saying pic ? Is solicitation from a legal standpoint.
Right.
even though, because like to me, when I hear the word solicitation, I'm like, oh, give me like there's pressure,
right?
And all this kind of stuff
Like catcalling or something.
Yeah,
Like, you know, like.
But so all he sent was pick. I think there was like 3 question marks, but
an exclamation point.
Yeah, please. So she sent him several pictures of herself naked, and so because he's a teenage boy, I raise teenage boys. So he immediately sent them to like 5 of his friends. Oof. So this, like, let's say she sent him 3 pics. He sent that to 5 of his friends. So now we're talking 15 crimes.
Copies. Right.
And so just him saying pic is a crime because he solicit. Oh, did I say his girlfriend was 15?
Yeah.
And so she is considered a minor, obviously. And so he solicited child pornography, 3 counts of that, and then distributed the 3 pics to 5 of his friends. So that's 15 counts of distributing child pornography. He was tried in adult court. And what happened was one of his friends that he sent that pic to, his mom walked by his phone, was sitting like on the kitchen counter, and she saw that pic come up on his phone. Oof. And so she's like, unlock your phone, like, show me the blah, 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 whatever. And so she called the authorities or something. Somehow the police got involved. The mother of the girl who took the picture actually testified in his defense.
Oh, in the boyfriend's defense?
Yeah, because she's like, he asked my daughter for a pic and she sent it.
Right.
She's the one that was dumb in the defense, right? Like, he's not guilty of a crime, but the court still prosecuted him as an adult. Right.
I mean, at that point, they take it on, right? And it doesn't really matter if they're going to charge it. It doesn't matter what's said. Because it's a minor. I mean, which there's plenty of situations that's good, that's the case. But once the courts get a hold of it.
Because by the time it came to the court case, she was either 16 or 17, because these things don't happen like the next day, right? And so that was part of his defense. His lawyer said, well, she is of the age of consent now, and the judge said she's always going to be a minor because these pictures were taken when she was a minor. Like, there's no...
Wow, it's wild. And then in that case, I'm assuming he got put on the registry at that point because of the soliciting of minors. Yep. It's something that stays with him basically forever. He has to be registered forever, right? Yeah. But, wow, that's crazy. Don't do it.
It was all because they were like their birthdays were only a few months apart, and they were peers. But it's solicitation of child pornography.
Yeah.
I had another kid this guy was my client. He would just ask girls at school for pics, and they would send them to him.
And he had like a bunch, right?
Yeah, dozens.
Yeah.
Of different girls send him pics. And I'm like, how do you get these girls to send you these pics? And he's like, I just asked. Like, and so they said, do these girls talk to you at school? And he said, no. They're way too cool to talk to him. But they'll send them naked pictures.
Yeah, that's...
I don't understand.
It's a different generation, Brad. It's a different generation. But it's like almost like currency, it sounds like this is... Or status, I suppose. Like, I'm sure him sharing that he gotten certain girls' pictures was like, got him clout or whatever. Like, hey, I got this popular girl's picture, and she gave me the naked picture. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it creates currency. It's just wild to me, and it's like nothing, like, whatever. And
in order for it to create currency, the receiver of those pics has to be showing people to get clout, right? So that means they're not private,
right?
Like, I think sometimes the sender, for some reason, thinks that nobody's going to see these except for the person I'm interested in.
Also with, like, Snapchat disappearing messages, like, that supposedly disappears. Nothing disappears from the internet, you know what I mean? Yeah.
It might disappear off your phone, but there's a server in China somewhere where all these pictures are sitting there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and even, again, even with adults sexting, if someone gets access to it or whatever, I mean, there's a whole thing about revenge porn, right? Like, that's a very hot topic right now, and something that they're cracking down on more, where you've had a video or pictures or whatever of your ex-partner, and then you publish it online without their knowledge or whatever, that they're cracking down on that hard.
Yep.
So there's definitely risks. How would you, what would you advise towards parents of, teens especially, that are, if they're afraid of this happening, or if they're worrying or whatever, you know what I mean? They're like, damn, I don't want my kid to get in trouble.
Yes, right? My advice to parents is always talk to your children, right? Like, communicate with them. I think sometimes as parents, we get into the habit of saying, don't do that thing, right? Don't have sex, or don't send pictures, or don't drink alcohol, or whatever, right? We tell our kids don't. But we don't explain why we're saying don't. So with teenagers, however their brain is wired, if you tell them don't do something and there's no explanation that they can understand, then that's going to make them want to do it more. Right? Oh, if they don't want me to do this, it must be cool, right? So I'm going to do it. But if you talk to them about some of these things we've talked about already, and some of the things we haven't talked about, of the dangers of sexting, like, for one, that these pictures are going to be around forever, for the rest of your life. You may not always be with this 7th grade boy that you like. Like, this may not be your forever person. And so what's going to happen to those pictures when you break up? Those pictures are not deleted, right? And so, like, you can even say delete those pictures, but
right. It's hard. That's harder to go that direction,
why would they?
Right? Or just say I will, and don't.
Right,
you
exactly.
you don't know.
So sharing some of these things with your kids, that there are dangers to this, and, like, I understand why people do it, right? It's very flattering to be asked, right? I would think. Yeah. I've never been asked.
Patty, come on.
I would think it would be very flattering to be asked that.
Definitely.
And so you want to kind of oblige because I'm interested in having a relationship with you, or whatever.
You're being desired,
right?
Of course,
And so then I would think the natural inclination would be to share that. And plus, we live in a digital age now. Like, everybody has these cameras in their pocket, right? Back in the day, you used to have to carry around a camera hanging on your neck, right? And so now you don't have to do that. And so we live in a digital age where everything is instantaneous. And so that's my advice, is talk to your kids.
To them.
Explain why this is dangerous. Explain, like, affirm with them, I understand why you want to do this. But these pictures never go away. They can be used against you later. Employers now often will go on people's social media accounts.
Yep.
I've heard of, you're interviewing for a job and they make you give them your password right there.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard about that. That's crazy.
So they can, and I've heard this more than once, actually.
Damn.
And I don't even know how that's legal. But
for real.
Like, I want your Facebook password, or I want your, whatever your social media password is, so that I can look at your account on what you've posted, right? To see if it goes against our company values or whatever.
Right.
And then if you have stuff on there that's questionable, then they're not going to hire you.
Right. Well, and you may not know with the idea of nothing goes away. They may Google you, or may find another way to search, and then something comes up of like, whoa, this naked picture, suggested picture that you didn't even know, because it may not be on your social media, but somehow got out somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, so you never truly know. And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. I was gonna say, I think it's important to give those specifics, like you said, the why. But I think sometimes people don't get it, and I find this with clients too. I give my little spiel of like, okay, these are the things that I have to report you on, or like I have to break confidentiality because of these specific reasons. And I think people hear that and are just like, oh yeah, okay, cool, that makes sense. Like child abuse or neglect, suicide, homicide, they're like, okay, well, I'm not abusing my child or whatever, but there's a way more gray area than you think. You know what I mean? Like so giving kids or giving people specifics of like, well, this is one example of where someone got in trouble. Like that example, I bet people wouldn't guess, like, oh, they're boyfriend and girlfriend, but it's considered child porn. You know what I mean? So giving someone the specific example, or like For example, if more of an adult side, if your kid comes in while you and your partner are having sex and they see everything, right. Or if they come in, there was a client, if they come in while you're watching porn and they see
right.
explicit porn, that's technically child abuse. You're subjecting your child to
yep.
pornographic material, but people don't think that, you know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think you're right. Clients think, well, I'm not actively abusing my child. But there's things that are accidental that we still have to report. Like smoking weed in front of your child, that's reportable.
Right.
Even though weed is legal in Michigan, right? Recreational use of weed. But you can't do that in front of children.
Right. Or I had a client that their kid got into their gummies, their weed gummies, yep. And it's like, and actually, I'm pretty sure CPS was called. So it's like, those are those, and especially with younger clients and teens, as it is, they're not thinking ahead anyways. They're not thinking like in that same way. Their brains aren't as developed. So giving them specifics like, hey, this happened to this person, like in this scenario, like, so this is an example of that, you know?
Yeah, I've scared a number of clients straight by telling them that story of the guy,
yes.
the kid that was arrested
yep.
20 miles from where we're sitting.
Yeah.
I tell them that story and their eyes get really big. And I'm like, so maybe you should think about the sexting thing.
For sure, like, for sure.
You might want to pump the brakes on that.
yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it's always an inherent risk. So I suppose, you know, a big thing would be trying to minimize the risk as much as possible, because there's always a risk. It's a risk if I send a naked picture of my wife, naked picture to my wife, yes. whatever, you know what I mean? I'm still a risk, even though right. we're spouses, whatever, you know, but there's always a risk. But like, how can you minimize that the most, I guess, is the big thing, I feel like.
Yeah, there's really nothing done on internet capable devices is private.
Basically.
Unfortunately, we think it is, but it's not.
So how about switching gear a little bit? How about with people's online interactions, specifically like talking to people online or like the sexting with people? What are some things? So in the realm of like sexploitation and like stuff like that, what are some things that people should look out for to see like, okay, well, maybe this is not a great interaction I should be having online, or whatever, maybe risk of being sexploited or whatever. I don't know. What are some tips or red flags that happen if you're talking online with someone, sexting or whatever?
I think like the person getting too close too fast kind of a thing, where like if they appear to be the perfect person, they're probably not.
Too good to be true.
Yeah, right. Yep. And certainly like if they start asking for money or it's almost probably too late by then, but that's definitely something to know that you should pump the brakes on that if they or if there's like any kind of threat, right? Like, I'm going to cut off contact with you if you don't do this. That's not really a person that you want to be in a relationship with. If they're going to make you feel guilty or force you to do stuff. Consent is a real thing. And we should talk about consent.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that, again, like, I'm not sitting here saying that between two consenting adults, like if you guys want to sext each other, I don't have a problem with that. But I still don't know who has access to those pictures, who has access to your cloud account, what's going to happen to those pictures if you guys get a divorce or break up. And even in some ways, what is that going to be used for, right? I've had married couples who, you know, videotape themselves having sex and they send that to each other. But then when they get in a fight or an argument, I've had partners say, I don't want you masturbating to my pictures because I'm mad at you right now. So,
right.
And if you do that, I'm going to feel used, like, and abused, right? If by you using these pictures when I'm not okay with you, right? So,
right. Yeah, that's a hairy one.
Yep. And so there's there's a lot to, I think, watch out for and be careful. I mean, in my opinion, you would really need to trust this person 100% to share pictures with them. And have no doubt in your mind whatsoever after you vetting them, that you have no doubt in your mind whatsoever that this person will betray you at some point.
Right. Which is a hard line to have for sure. When it's just crazy because that's, like, obviously if you're a supportive partner in that situation where you have your partner's video and then they say, okay, I don't want you masturbating to it. If you're a decent person, you're like, okay, well, I won't. But technically, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But technically, it's in your possession and you could do whatever you want with it, right? I mean, there's no, like, legal basis to be like, no, you shouldn't have done that. Unless it's like you publish it online, of course, like the revenge porn stuff. But
right. Yeah, I don't think legally they would have a court case against that. But still, the idea of, when I shared this with you, we were okay. Now we're not okay.
Right. It's scary.
If you think about it like sex, right? So, I can have sex with my partner when we're both in agreement that should happen. But if we're fighting and I ask for sex and they say no, then I should respect that, right? So if I share a video with somebody and then we're fighting and I'm like, don't use that video to masturbate, to me that's the same thing.
Yes,
right?
Yes, but it's
I
not
wouldn't force that person to have sex with me when we're mad at each other. So why am I going to masturbate to a video that they sent me when they're mad at me?
Right. It's like having sex on command, and any times you have it at the ready, regardless of what the partner wants. Exactly. It's kind of crazy. But obviously that is not viewed that way. The digital life is very separate. It's viewed as separate as real life.
Which is weird.
It is weird
because there's people, like, even totally off this topic.
Okay, that's all right.
There's people that I talk to online regularly, but if I run into the grocery store, I have nothing to say to them.
It's true. Even like friends, like, you have Facebook friends, but you would never say anything to them in public. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
It's so true.
And we can talk online, but, like, I don't even know what to say to you when we're face to face, right? All of our conversations are online.
Right. It's so true. Yeah, it is crazy. It's so separate. So that's, and maybe that's kind of a little bit of a tip or a thing to think about, like, to some degree, what were you, should your online behavior shouldn't be that far off from your real life behaviors, at least if you want, protect yourself or whatever. Like, don't do the things you wouldn't do in public with someone trusted or something to that effect. I don't know. There's a tip in there somewhere. I'm not really saying it well, but like trying to keep that gap smaller. I don't.
Well, and there's a lot of, unfortunately, nefarious people on the internet, right? There's a lot of people who are out to cause you damage, right? And so stealing your identity or exploiting you, extorting you for money. There's a lot of people out there that are trying, who are not who they appear to be, right? I mean, I've had teenage clients talking to people in another country online, and they're like, yeah, they're my age, and they're the same grade in school, and I'm like, you don't even, this could be a 55-year-old guy in his mother's basement. You don't even know who this is. You
literally have no idea.
That stole some teenager's picture off the internet, and that's their profile pic, and you have no idea who this person is, right? And unfortunately, these people who exploit other people, they know how to talk to people, right? They know how to manipulate people into being vulnerable. Which is another thing to talk to your kids about.
Yep, exactly. Well, and I think part of that too is, again, part of that talking to your kids is like having the environment where they can tell you these things. You're not going to prevent stuff from happening, but you can maybe prevent things from getting too crazy or whatever. Right. If you have an open dialogue with your child, and they're sharing, like, I was talking to this person online, and they feel safe to share with you, then you're like, oh, okay, well, man, just, be mindful of whatever, like, oh, let me take a look at this person. Okay, cool, whatever, like, at least you're able to mitigate if making it worse or whatever. It's the issues that happen is someone gets exploited, and then they feel shame, and they get secretive with it, and then that just never, and they don't tell anyone, and that just creates a whole nother bag of issues. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's key is having an ongoing conversation with your kids, right? Where there's just this open dialogue where they can come and share things with you that's bothering them or they don't understand or whatever. Because if there's something they don't understand and they Google it, then that's going to expose them to porn. If it's something sexual and they don't understand it and they Google it, there's literally millions of porn sites will show up, right? Because the porn companies have paid to boost their content, right? So that they come up higher in the Google algorithm or whatever, right? And so you want your kids to be able to approach you and ask you questions about stuff, and answer them honestly and openly without judgment, right? Because if you don't answer them openly and honestly and without judgment, then they're never going to ask you another question, right?
Exactly.
And so then they're going to get that from porn, or they're going to get it from their friends, which is just as bad. Just as bad as in not legitimate knowledge.
Right. Sounds mean. It's not legitimate knowledge, but it's true.
It's not science.
It's not evidence-based information.
It's just going to be somebody's opinion who doesn't have a degree. And so... Yeah, you're going to want your kids to approach you and ask you questions. Sure, it's awkward as a parent, right?
Of course.
It's very awkward to be asked these questions, but you'd rather suffer with that awkwardness of your own child asking you questions than you are when your child is arrested and on trial at 16 years old for sexting.
Right,
and manufacturing and distributing child pornography. Right? So, so pick your uncomfortableness.
Definitely. So wrapping up, someone that's been, involved in a sexploitation or blackmailer online or whatever, whether that be a kid, whether that be, I think some of the tips apply. What are some tips that you can give to someone that's in that situation, either adult or young kid?
I would probably change your phone number. I've suggested that to clients before, because if they're texting you directly, if they have your number, then you can change your phone number. You can always give your new phone number out to your friends and family and whatever. Cut off communication with them immediately. Right. Like
don't pay.
Yeah.
Don't send anything. Don't send any other messages. Nothing.
Yep. Just stop. Like, don't even tell them that you're stopping. Just stop.
Yes.
So cut off contact, change your number, tell somebody that you trust, because unfortunately we can't trust society anymore. Like, people are disappeared regularly around here, right? Like anyway, so this person could, who knows, right? Who they are, right? So they could become violent or whatever. So you need to tell somebody that you trust what's happening. Contact the authorities. The internet laws are way behind where they should be. So the authorities may not do anything, is why I said that. But that doesn't mean you should not tell them, because maybe they can do something. Right. And so, but you should still tell somebody, because there needs to be some kind of paper trail, right? There needs to be some kind of, you told them on 3 separate occasions to stop talking to you. Now this is harassment, right? But if you don't have proof that you've told them all these times, then the police are going to be like, well, you've never told them to stop. How do they know you wanted to stop, right?
Right. And I think that's one of the other tips too, is like collecting the documentation or the evidence or whatever, all the things they've sent or you've sent the screenshots
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, getting as much information without talking to them, of course, as you can about the interaction of the person. I think it's helpful as well to at least give police or whatever something to go off of, especially if this is someone that's been scamming consistently or have scammed other people or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm not. So this next part, I'm not implying that there's something like mentally wrong with people who have been exploited with sexting or whatever, but I'll often talk to my clients like, how did you allow yourself to get in this place where somebody could take advantage of you? I'm not saying it's your fault, because if this person is a bad person, then that's their fault.
Yes.
But
yes.
It does bear examining, like, how can we prevent this from happening in the future? And part of how can we prevent this from happening in the future is, how did you allow yourself to get here so that we can stop that in the future, so we can head that off, right? So you don't fall for this again the next time somebody with bad intent, so you don't allow them into your life,
right?
To kind of be able to ruin your life.
Right. Again, it's a guilt versus shame thing we always talk about. Like, it's not that you're a bad person. It's just the decisions that led up to it. You can change those the next time and not get extorted or whatever. And again, these things were designed to trick people. That's the point.
Yep.
Yes, they do that. They do this. A lot of scammers do it day in and day out. It's their full-time job. So they know what people respond to, what people don't respond to. You know what I mean? So it doesn't, whether it's or catfishers, it's all the same. Like, they know what people will respond to. So there's no need to feel like you're terrible,
right?
Because you fell in a trap that was supposed to be a trap.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like you said, they're doing this as a full-time job. They're probably talking to 30 or 40 people at the same time.
Right. Exactly.
It's not you. You're just not that special.
right.
Like, they're catfishing a lot of people. They're scamming a lot of people.
Definitely.
So stop. That's my advice.
Just stop immediately. Stop right now.
Stop it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a crazy topic, and it's, again, I don't think we're villainizing it, but I think it's important to know the risks and stuff like that. And obviously, there's resources out there. FBI.gov has a whole thing about extortion. And we can flash that on the screen, but. If you're in a situation that you don't like where you should be, where there's resources out there, and you don't have to feel shameful for getting caught. Just a couple months ago, it wasn't a sextortion thing, but I got caught by a scammer, and I pride myself on like seeing the email that's kind of a weird email, phishing attempt or whatever, and I got caught by a scammer, and it's a weird feeling of like, they got me. Like, it's like kind of vulnerable and kind of like, that's gross, so I get it, but that doesn't mean you're bad. It's just, again, you got caught in a trap that was supposed to be a trap.
It just means the bad person is good at their job.
Right.
And they're getting more and more sophisticated.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks for listening. We always love to hear the comments and your topics and questions and all that. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Wet Dreamz Podcast. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for joining us.
The Wet Dreamz Podcast and any content posted is intended for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes only. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional, diagnosis, or treatment. Listeners should not disregard or delay in obtaining a medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.